everyone. Welcome to this episode of the Connected Families Podcast. This podcast is the second in a 4-part series about anxiety. Listen in as Jim and Lynn Jackson, co-founders of Connected Families, together with close colleague and marriage and family therapist Chad Hangay, explore some of the best ways to encourage our kids when they experience anxiety.
Here we are, episode number 2, anxiety for parents. Anxiety.
There we go. Right.
We are talking about anxiety in this series, and last episode we talked about our own anxiety. That was too hard. I don't want to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we've got that taken care of. We can move on to episode 2 now.
Let's just talk about the kids.
Now the
They're
parents
so
are
anxious.
no longer anxious.
Right.
We're going to talk about ways in which parents engage with their kids when they're anxious in both unconstructive and constructive sorts of ways.
Yeah.
And as the summer has started, and some of the summer issues go on throughout the year, but what are some of the most fresh memories you have of helping parents through anxiety recently with their children?
Well, it was really nice to get past all the anxious parents calling for help with at-home learning.
Yeah. Who knows, that might be a thing forever.
Yeah, but, bedtime and, meals and all sorts of things can really spike anxiety in kids.
Okay.
Potty training.
Yeah, so real stuff, and we're going to get practical about that. How about you, Chad?
Yeah, one that stands out is recently coaching with a couple, and the dad is the coach of the softball team. His daughter was on, and he really said that there were just 2 things that he wouldn't tolerate, and one was a lack of effort and disrespect. And you'll never guess what his child was displaying.
Let me see.
Just your tone of voice when you said that, I was like, man, I don't want to play sports.
Right.
Yeah. Right. I just want to sit on the bench.
I just want to have fun.
Right, I think I had the same response. I started to get anxious.
So there's performance anxiety, there's dinner time, there's separation, there's bedtime, there's getting off of computers, there's getting onto computers. We've dealt with it all recently, and we're going to try to get practical as much as we can.
Yeah.
And in as much as we talked in the last episode about the importance of us as parents leading the way, calming our own hearts, having the sort of attitude towards our kids really that exhibits the fruit of the Spirit. We didn't talk as much about that last time, but that's kind of the general theme. Now it's time to engage with our kids. And I recognize, having been a parent and watched parents and helped parents, there's some stuff that we do because we have good intentions that we wish we hadn't done. There's some stuff that we ought to do that we're not doing that we just don't know about. But our kids are looking to us, aren't they? Mm-hmm. And Lynn, I know that you have studied up a little bit on the author Lawrence Cohen, whose work we like as it relates to helping kids with anxiety, and we'll post a link to one of his resources here. But he talks about this in a really captivating and I think concrete and helpful way. Why don't you unpack that a little bit as we start?
So Lawrence, when he was probably in about 8th grade, was taking care of his mom, who was a classroom teacher, her little fluffy yellow chicks over a weekend, and he needed a science project. So he ended up learning some fascinating things just from handling these chicks. And if he had one chick and picked it up and just held it for a little bit and then set it down in a cage by itself, it would take about a minute. There would be about a minute-long freeze response where the chick would just lay there. If he had 2 chicks and he picked them up at the same time and then set them down together at the same time, it would take 5 minutes because they would sort of get their cues from each other. Is it safe yet? And they'd just lay there. But if a chick that he picked up and then set it down next to a chick that hadn't been picked up, who was just hopping around and having a gay old time, the chick that had been handled would snap out of fight or flight in just a few seconds. There was a huge difference whether or not there was another chick nearby and what kind of cues that chick was giving to the chick that had been handled.
So the moral of the story, as I hear it, is that the stressed chick or chicks needs an unstressed chick to help them out, and to help them get back to normal.
Yep.
And is there an analogy you're trying to make here?
Absolutely.
Say more.
For sure. Well, it really does help parents to understand their kids' brains in this. And if you have a more sensitive child, their anxiety system, their self-protection system is going to just be on edge. And there's really 4 parts to this system: alert, alarm, assess, and all clear. And Lawrence talks about this in his book. But alert is that general sense of there might be danger around. I need to be on alert. And alarm is, oh my gosh, something's wrong, something's happening. And assess is, okay, but now that I've made my initial first protective response, I need to figure out, really, is there danger or not? That's the assess part. And if I can get my frontal lobe back on, then I can declare, okay, it's all clear. I can let my anxiety down. So a sensitive child is more on alert than other typical kids, and their alarm rings louder and longer and hijacks their brain more than other kids, which shuts off their frontal lobe, so they really don't assess the true danger well, and it's hard for them to get to all clear. So parents tend to come in, they see their child on edge and then go into alarm, and what do the parents do? They try to immediately impose assess and all clear. It's fine, you'll be all right, just settle down, there's no danger, there's nothing to be worried about. And then they're not actually a calm chick, they're another threat in the cage.
Okay. So again, the moral of the story, deepened here, is what kids need from parents is to be that moderating force, that moderating presence that helps the kids to understand their own alert systems, to understand viable versus not viable alarms, that helps kids learn to assess things more reasonably, and then to be able to learn to sound the all clear and go back to life as normal.
Right. And the more the parent creates an environment that keeps kids out of the hyper alert, hyper vigilant state in the first place, the more there's just a general sense of peace and calm and connection and don't worry, I got you covered, I'm watching for any danger, sort of a thing, then the less that child has to be predisposed to hypervigilance or anxiety themselves.
So I'm guessing most parents listening to this are thinking, I want to be that presence. I want to be that second chick for my child. And so I'm going to do some things. You know, some parents may not be as thoughtful about how to be that chick, but most parents want to be the presence in their kids' lives that helps those kids learn to overcome stuff, to overcome their anxiety, to deal well with stress, and to get on successfully with life.
Right.
But there's some things I think as parents, I'm recognizing and thinking of some things I did as a young parent that had that good intention, but that were not all these things that my kids needed truly to help them get a grasp of and overcome their own anxiety. I became a part of the problem, not the solution, even though I had good intention. And Chad, you talked about this dad who, as a coach, had good intentions for the performance of his daughter, but talk more about that story, because I think that's very common for parents to sort of be in this role of the helper to their children. And we've heard how many parents say, I thought I was doing the right thing, but it all blew up.
Right. And I think the good intentions, again, coming in and volunteering, good for you, right? So we need some help here, and you're just coming in to volunteer.
So Dad is the volunteer coach of a team.
Volunteer coach of a team. He's got an assistant, and he's got some expectations around his daughter and her ability to perform. You know, again, most of us would say that the expectations of putting in a good effort and being respectful would be minimal, right? I mean, that's the bottom line expectation. And but Dad would say that there she is, standing at home plate, afraid she's going to get hit by the ball. She's got the bat, hanging over her shoulder, not like we talked about. And then when I call her out on it, she yells at me and then yells at the assistant coach, which even makes me more angry. And so I kind of jump on that and say, you sit down right there and watch these other batters for a little bit. Okay? You watch them and see how it's done. And they're not jumping out of the way of the ball. The ball's not going to hit you, right? And so now you can see there's a lot of places where that can end up.
So a dad with good intentions to teach his daughter good lessons, getting fairly intense, maybe even a little dominant about this. How did that go for the daughter? Did she get more or less anxious under that approach?
I think that you can predict it, right? That it did not increase her performance. She did not go, I'm going to try harder now.
Thus, the parents show up at your door, on your Zoom, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Some coaching.
Exactly.
Right? We want to work through this. So there's the good intention in action. We want to work through this. What we're doing isn't as helpful as we'd like it to be. Now what?
Yeah, and when we start to unpack some of those things too, to Dad's credit, at the end of the session, he just said, I know I have a lot of work to do. Right? So just even awareness that it kind of starts with me here, and blaming my child is not probably the best place to start.
So as we talked about this issue, we talked about kind of the don'ts that we see parents put in place, that don't do this, parents, even though you've got good intention. We see some don'ts in place, and then we're going to offer some do's. So Lynn, guide us through what some of the general don'ts that we want to address are here. Parents, don't do this.
Well, it even makes a little acronym to when we add to our anxiety, when we ADD, we usually do it by either we amplify, we dominate, or we dismiss.
Okay.
ADD. So amplify is when we engage with our anxiety and we might placate or try to protect our child, or we just exude our anxiety into the situation. You know, the separation anxiety is a classic one for this to show up in, and we'll be talking about that some next session, but where we're so anxious about what's going on that we amplify the child's feelings and we protect them. And then dominate is when my anger and frustration just fuels this. It's a just shape up, it's the angry eye contact, impatient, forceful.
So this was Coach Dad's approach.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that was
knock it off.
Yeah.
What are you doing? Right? It's not how I taught you.
Yeah. And then the last D, so it's amplify, dominate, or dismiss, is where we get real logical and we kind of access that left brain side and we're going, I know and you don't. You know, we condescend and we tell them all the facts about why they shouldn't be anxious. We demand what's wrong, and we tell kids to just kind of toughen up or calm down, and we minimize it. It's not that bad. It could be worse. You'll get over it. Just
Getting hit by the ball isn't a big deal. I mean, your teammate here just got hit and they're on first base and they're fine.
Yeah, so here are all the reasons that you shouldn't feel the way that you feel.
Yeah.
And stop it.
Yeah.
Right? That's dismissive. Okay, well, do you want to unpack these a little bit more, or should we take this to break and come back on the other side with the list of antidotes?
I think we should focus on the list of antidotes.
Let's do the do's and not do the don'ts anymore.
Here at Connected Families, our mission is to equip parents to lead their family with grace. With that in mind, we have a number of free resources on our website. There's a free ebook called Help Your Child with Their Anger. There is also a number of free encouraging image downloads and even a list of 60 fun activities to do with your kids. If you are interested in free resources to help you with your parenting, check out our website at connectedfamilies.org. Click on the resources tab and then click on free.
Okay, we're going to take some time now. We've learned that we, even if we have good intentions, don't amplify by placating and overprotecting. Don't dominate by getting angry and big with your energy to get your kids' anxiety to go away. And don't be dismissive by just telling kids the reasons they shouldn't feel that way. Those are normal things that we tend to do. Even, I would suggest, defaults for some parents. It's just what we've learned to do. It's probably what was done to us.
Absolutely.
And so writing new scripts in our minds and hearts about how to navigate this really involves thinking through 3 do's that we're going to introduce to you.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about how to validate. So we want to validate and empathize, kind of normalize with our kids. We want to regulate with them. So we're in this with you, not kind of doing something to you. And then the last one is empower. We want to empower them to be overcomers, to be able to take control of their own bodies and to move forward through those anxious times.
So let's dig into validating kids. This is a hard first step for a lot of parents, because we feel like if we validate these feelings that my child has that they ought not have, that it tends to reinforce it.
Yeah.
We've found the opposite to be true, haven't we?
Yeah, to just help kids be able to name their feelings without us like diving in and matching them or, you know, having the same feelings dominate us. To have empathy, but to normalize, like, oh, you know, you're 4 and it does seem really scary to a 4-year-old in here, doesn't it? I remember when I was little and I kind of thought there was something hiding in my closet, and it took me a while to get, you know, to realize there wasn't, but I understand feeling a little scared right now. That kind of makes sense to me. So you're not diving in with the same feeling. You're validating, but letting kids know that this too shall pass, and you can help them work through it.
Yeah, or even I get scared sometimes too, right? Yeah.
Right.
And what would that look like in the example of a child at bat afraid that the ball is going to hit them in a softball game?
Yeah, I think the same is true of being able to talk about what would happen and being afraid of that myself. Personally, I remember playing baseball and being terrified of the ball. So even Dad in that story of being able to say, oh, wow, it is scary. That ball, let's feel that ball. It is kind of hard, isn't it? And just validating it, being able to say, that could sting a little bit, wouldn't it? And I love the sharing my own story, or, having Dad in this story talk a little bit about his process of what that was like, how he could relate to that, of fear or pain or whatever it might be.
Yeah, when our young kids who are looking to us to be that moderating chick are able to know we've been through this and that it was scary for us and we got through it, that can be part of the moderating process, can't it?
And I think the other piece in there is to focus then on when the child has stood in there, right? I think it's to validate that. It's like, oh, wow, I saw that even though you were a little scared, you stayed in there for 3 pitches.
Yeah, how was that for you?
How did you do that?
Yeah, how did you do that?
Yep, and you can feel the different tone and even the receptivity of a child receiving that interaction.
There is something powerful when we do validate kids' feelings, especially if we label them. The whole principle of name it to tame it. And we'll have a link about that for you in the show notes. But Dan Siegel has a whole video that's just excellent on helping you understand how labeling a feeling sends signals to the fight or flight center to just, it's not so bad. I'm starting to figure this out. The worst danger is a danger that I don't understand. And so when I can begin to name it, and that helps me to start that process of, I can deal with this. I can figure this out.
A lot.
So that's really the beginning of helping our kids develop a language and a thought process for their own anxiety, rather than just telling them how they should navigate it, helping them sort out how they navigate it, putting it to words, validating their process and their growth and their experience. And, Chad, you mentioned this thing about telling stories, and I know in my work with other people's kids, a lot of them who struggled with high levels of anxiety, helping them tell their story a little bit was good, but for me to tell my story was also really helpful. But there was another part of validating that was just giving them words to start to talk about what their process would be if it went the way they wanted it to. Like, what do you wish would happen when you stood at home plate, and what do you think it might take to do that?
How would you want to be?
Yeah, and so that really sort of gets into some of the empowering parts too, but starting to put words, starting to put a story around this experience that's your child's story, not your story about what's happening, is such an important part of validation. And then we move on to think about how to regulate, how to help our kids learn to self-regulate. And Lynn, you said regulate with them. What does that mean?
Well, the official term is co-regulate, because that's how kids first learn to regulate. Well, actually, we regulate them initially when they're little babies by hugging, rocking, bouncing, cuddling, all those things. And then the next phase is we begin to co-regulate with them by sharing in calming activities. And so a helpful thing to think about, well, what would be calming, is to think again about that phrase, what don't you do when you're under physical attack? If you are in true danger, what does your brain not do? Because if you can gauge in those things, then that's going to calm that fight or flight system down. And so you don't stop to hug anybody when you're under physical attack. So just gently offering a hug to a struggling child can be enough to begin to start that.
Yeah.
We don't laugh or play when we're under physical attack. So doing fun, silly things when a child is a little upset can be a calmer. So you might even, if you had a child that was anxious about going to the bathroom by themselves, you might grab a couple of their stuffed animals and Their second favorite might be saying, oh, she's too little. She's going to be too afraid to go into the bathroom by herself. And then their favorite stuffed animal might be saying, you don't know her very well. She's really learning to be brave. Oh, no, she's not. Yes, she is. And then you get going back and forth. And then you could turn to the child and go, which one do you think is right?
Or which one do you want to be?
Or which,
So this idea of co-regulating, what are the natural things parents do as their kids are growing to co-regulate?
Well, there's all sorts of movement things that we can do. And then, as we talked about in the sensory diet post, to use up the fight or flight chemicals that send blood away from the frontal lobe, send it to the motor cortex and the big muscles. Use that up in fun interactions. And parents can sort of intuitively do that. If a child is struggling, you just kind of start to, shoot some hoops of an older child or do a little play wrestling with a younger child. But put the child in the stronger position.
So in some ways, what I think I hear you saying is if there's a stressful situation that you know is stressful for your child over here, don't wait to get over here to do your teaching and your training and your teaching about regulation. Right. Do it over here. So again, back to the batting example, Chad. How are you thinking about what Lynn is saying as it relates to helping your daughter overcome anxiety in the batter's box?
Yeah, so one, it's coming, okay? So I think that's always the important piece for parenting is oftentimes we act surprised when we know something's going to happen. So this is going to happen. So what are the ways that we can have this conversation, even practice in a little bit of a safer setting where now somebody's not throwing a ball from 30 or 40 or 50 feet away. You're now just pitching the ball up and letting them hit it or hit it off a tee or just getting familiar with a ball that might be coming at them from 10 feet away rather than 30 feet away. I also think about even practicing getting hit, right? In really safe kinds of ways that the ball comes at you on the ground. You're rolling it, and did that hurt? And what would be so bad if it did hit you? But then I think the other piece is getting away from all of this bad thing could happen to me to what could really happen if I enjoyed this and if I relaxed and what would the result that I want to have happen look like? And help our kids sorting through that to get to what we would talk about as kind of a preferred future. And that just sets the tone, I think, to help our kids a lot.
Yeah, so I think in short what I'm hearing is, as it relates to this idea of regulating with your kids, co-regulating, regulate with your kids, is play with it before it's a big pressure deal. Play with it. And don't do it in a patronizing way, because kids will reject patronization right away. So you got to experiment with this. You can't laugh at your kids if they're not in a place to be laughed at. You can't laugh with your kids because they might feel laughed at if you're not careful about that, right? But what are the ways where the pressure is off, where we can go through these things that might be anxiety producing in scene B, but we're going to take control of scene A?
And Lawrence Cohen talks a lot about this. He talks about adults sort of playing the big clumsy doofus giant so that the child has to figure things out or protect the bumbling adult. Or in play wrestling, you empower the child to be stronger and push the adult down on the couch and you sprawl awkwardly and laugh. And so just helping kids to feel strong, to feel confident, to feel powerful more and more throughout the day can really affect then how they're going to deal with that typically anxiety producing situation.
I know that in my work with one particularly anxious young man, and I spent a lot of time with him, the importance of eye contact was in the context of co-regulating was really important. When he was super duper stressed, eye contact didn't work. But when he was a little less stressed, I could say, hey, look at me. Am I scared? Do you need to be scared? Talk a little bit, Lynn, because I know you've looked at this too, about the importance of eye contact and the nature of eye contact.
Right, including our facial expression at the time. Right, so as we can give a persona, a facial expression with safe, loving eyes, it's very helpful in a child just mirroring that, just that thing. Look me in the eyes. Are my eyes scared? No. Oh, okay. I just want you to know that. If there's not a condescending, well, then you shouldn't be scared either, but just look in my eye. Okay, are you forgetting that? Yep, look me in the eyes.
Well, and if, just even the difference of the child striking out or failing in some way at the softball with the dad down on one knee with a warm, gracious look, and he'll get them next time, whatever that might be. I think we need to prepare ourselves for that. Yeah. But just think about the reception, and likely, I don't know for sure, but likely the disrespect may go down as well when I'm down on one knee and I go, "Oh, girl, you'll get them next time. That's okay."
That was a tough go, but
as opposed to, "What have I been trying to tell you?" And it's almost like there's no other response that kiddo's got in terms of options. She's going to come back and fire at you. So
the last element of what you ought to do more of is to empower kids. Lynn, again, you've thought a lot through this from the perspective of these kids who are super anxious, whose brains are offline, and we're working to help them learn, not just tell them, but learn to self-regulate, get back online. What does empowerment mean? What does it look like? What are some clues for parents to do more empowering things?
Well, it's really about teaching them the skills they need for when you're not around, and they can begin to self-regulate. So an important part of that is it's even the technical term interoception, which is our perception of what's going on in our internal organs. So teach kids not just the feelings, that's a great start, but also to pay attention to their bodies, so that instead of just ramping up into fight or flight, they can go, "Oh, I have that icky feeling in my tummy. That means I need to go do something." Or my throat feels tight. That means I need to go talk to someone or go outside and play or whatever. So teaching them their physical triggers is a good starting place.
I think there's a lot of grown-ups that could stand to learn this. What's that big word you used?
Interoception.
Interoception.
We talked about grown-ups in the first episode.
I think that's such a huge deal. Like, in order to help our kids learn to monitor their breathing and understand the feeling of the pulse in their temples, or the warmth in their hands as they get upset, or the redness of their face.
In their stomach.
Like, how many of us as grown-ups are aware when we get upset of what happens and are able to put voice to it? Like, again, this is about empowering our kids, but it's such a key part of empowering our kids to lead the way with grace into this idea of being aware of our breathing. I mean, breathing is such a huge thing, Lynn. I've read a ton about it. I know you've even studied it some, but just say a practical word about the importance of breathing for our kids and what we can do to help them feel empowered to breathe better.
Yeah, it's the most transportable self-regulation device because you don't need any equipment. And breathing is actually the body's number one priority. So when breathing goes well, it's really a good nervous system calmer. So you can teach little kids a technique just called dragon breaths. And an important thing to start us off really is we model and we invite. We don't command, because if you say to a little child, "Okay, you need to take some deep breaths," you've just basically stopped them from the ability to do that, because now they're even more stressed. So we model and we invite, and we might model doing some dragon breath. Big, long, fiery exhale. Get all that tension out. Another thing that you can do is get party blowers when you're trying to teach kids long exhales, because kids will tend to, unless you've got a structured way to help them learn to actually breathe deeper and slower. So those are just some practical tips. But, even if they can't do it, it's like, it's all right. I'm just going to take some deep breaths so that I can be calmer. And then eventually that will be helpful for them.
Let's go back to the daughter in the batter's box. Empowering her in that situation, even with some of these tools, bigger breathing, paying attention to your body. And Lynn, you may want to help Chad with this one a little bit. Like, how do you put this into play in real time as your daughter is in the batter's box and it's time to perform?
Yeah. Well, first, I'd love to get your feedback. I think the breaths, though, focusing on what you do have control over here. And so while you're standing in the on deck circle and you're going to bat next, taking a couple breaths, calming yourself down, walking out there, perhaps, lots of times when you're on the on-deck circle, you're practice swinging the bat. Maybe you're jogging in place. You're doing some of the big muscle sorts of things to get yourself to a place where you can focus in on the ball that's coming toward you. And then I think there's also a thought pattern there too of rather than don't strike out, don't strike out, don't strike out, don't strike out.
Right.
Which just increases more anxiety.
Sure. I'm actually imagining a game back in the regulating with them before we get to the real game. Let's practice taking a deep breath as I start to throw the pitch so that by the time the ball gets here, you've got your deep breath in.
Yeah.
Just do that and see how that goes for you. Take a deep breath and then swing.
Yeah.
When the ball
practicing
is coming.
there, right?
And practice it and have fun with it. And I think you were letting your breath out a little bit. But then now you're in the game time. It's like, remember your breathing. Remember to breathe.
Right.
That's it. How was your breath? And then you can, instead of did you strike out or not, how was your breathing? Because that's that thing you've got control of, right?
Right. Back to what you have control of.
That's a great connection to a link that we'll put in the show notes, a TED Talk by Brett Ledbetter of Building Your Inner Coach. And it's teaching kids to talk about the process that supports the end result instead of getting anxious about the end result. It's a great little video, particularly for athletic kids. But the one little sensory motor thing I would think of, even before the child stands up, while they're on the bench, they can be doing little push-ups where you just put your hands right next to your butt and you just push up and rhythmically.
You're kind of cute when you do that.
All right, that's enough.
Wow. Okay, hey, I need to grab a drink of water.
We got to get the editor on this one. But it gives you big muscle work before you even get up to pick up the bat.
Yeah, I love all of this, and it harkens me back to the days where I was with young people every day, trying to help them feel empowered to understand their bodies, to understand their even their breathing, and how am I going to work my way into less anxiety and more confidence. The idea of where God's Spirit fits into all this ought not be lost, right? Like, this is not just a physical activity that we're doing for our kids to empower them. It's really empowering them to understand this peace that surpasses understanding, to get glimpses of it even as youngsters, and to bring the efforts and the energy that we're putting into coming alongside them and empowering them to the Word of God and to God's purposes for them, to know and understand these things so that they can walk in God's purposes with more confidence.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think to Joshua, in the book of Joshua, where he says, be strong and courageous. And the more we can, throughout the day with a struggling, anxious child, to focus on little instances of bravery and, creating little just right challenges for the next bravery step, and put our focus on how everybody gets afraid, but you are learning to be brave, and have that be our focus can really be helpful.
Yeah.
I think back to the young man that you worked with, Jim, and you really set him up for perfect little just right challenges of bravery steps, and that was transformational for him.
Yeah, it was. And, with him, one of the big things was, to create an identity around him. People used to always tell him with sort of a negative tone, you're a piece of work, and with frustration. Yeah. And I was like, well, a piece of work, that's kind of similar to God's handiwork, and so let's reframe this and teach a phrase that is, you're a piece of work. God built you for cool purposes to do cool things, and when I say that to you, I want you to remember that's true. So then when we're working on overcoming anxiety about going shopping or about going to a certain location where there's fear that and this was high level anxiety, that there's going to be somebody there with with a bad, want to kidnap us or shoot us up or give us drugs or something like that, to be able to say, we're going to get through that. Remember how, with a smile, and you're a piece of work. And what does a piece of work do when they come into times like this? So take a breath. Let's breathe, and let's look at each other, and let's smile, and let's overcome this together. And to see the progress that he was able to make under that sort of care was a lot of what motivates me to do the kind of work we do now, because I could see that at that grand level, something was happening that we needed to capture and give to parents as best we could.
You brought his identity into the nitty-gritty challenges that he was going to face, and all the specific steps that he would experience in a situation that could send him over the edge, and you brought that identity of bravery into each one.
So I do want to just ask quickly, or at least mention the notion, I'm just telling a story about when I was enlisted to help. somebody whose child had extreme anxiety. Sometimes that's necessary. That's helpful. How do we know? How do we know when our kids need more help than what we can give them?
I think if you're really working to be calm presence and to empower your child and to do some of these suggestions that really can be so helpful, and you're still feeling stuck and everyday life is being significantly impeded by a child's anxiety, that's a good time to get some help.
Yeah.
But I would defer to our licensed marriage and family therapist, Chad Hangay, for the answer to that question.
Yeah, well, I think that's right on. You're doing the things that you know to do, and oftentimes when parents come to us with anxious kids, then they'll say, well, should I send them to a counselor or something like that? I think you start to get the thought of, I'm going to send them away for help because it's their problem, and it's never that simple. It's never just their problem. And I come from a family systems perspective where the family really is working to solve the problem and the issues that we're dealing with. And so oftentimes I'll say, well, let's start with coaching. Let's start with you. You're the willing one here. Sometimes kids aren't so excited or willing to go get help or go to a counselor or a therapist. So I always want to start with the person who's willing first, and then let's work on some things there. And if the problems persist or things over time are not improving, that would be a good indication that there might be some other things to take a look at here.
Right on. That may be about a parent's capacity, maybe about a young person's capacity, or the combination thereof.
Yeah, and you start with an assessment. So we're just gaining information here. Let's find out kind of what's going on and what the potential issues might be, and make a plan from there.
Well, a lot of stuff, and I feel like we could talk about this topic for a long time, the do's and the don'ts of helping our kids feel empowered to tackle their own anxiety. It's real, and there's more anxiety in our world maybe than ever. And so we hope these ideas are helpful. And if you would like a little bit of more help than what we were able to give you here, reach out to us and let us know. We're here for you.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Connected Families Podcast. We hope you got tips that you can use in your parenting today. Please subscribe and leave us a positive review so other families can find us and learn how to parent with peace and connection.